Hello and welcome to the Brave Hearts, Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. I'm Lee Hatcher. Thanks for joining me on this journey into how to help the boys of today grow into the fine young men of tomorrow. Each week I'll be interviewing an educator from the Scots College in Sydney to uncover very practical tools with which parents of school-age boys can engage, encourage and challenge their sons for wisdom and compassion. So, let's ring the bell and meet our guests for this week's podcast. Joining us today is the principal of the Scots College, Dr. Ian Lambert, to talk about building learning communities for boys and unlocking their potential. Dr. Lambert, welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for talking to me this morning.
Look forward to this conversation especially. Your vision of unlocking a boy's potential rests on a set of core values. What sort of values, where do they come from?
I think when you consider a person, and we talk about this notion of human flourishing, that in order to flourish in life, you need to have a foundation. And most of us in a fairly messy world don't know where that is. For us at the Scots College, we have a very strong history and tradition. We have a Christian foundation that has a set of values around how we care, how we treat people, our honesty, integrity, all those sorts of values that have just permeated the world. But we need to re-articulate those on a daily, weekly basis for boys and help them to live those out in practical programs and practical settings so that they know that they do inform and shape your life.
Yes.
So developing a worldview, what do I value? How do I know that I'm doing the right thing? What are my ethics? All of those things are often neglected. We think about content, but we're not thinking about sort of the philosophy of life and
character.
And who am I and where am I going and what am I here for? All those sorts of questions are really important questions, particularly for young people.
What kind of character traits are you seeking to develop in these boys to unlock their potential?
Because we're an educational institution, I would say curiosity is foundational to any good scholar. And if you're not somebody who likes to read, research and continue to do that all your life, you've probably been poorly educated. So curiosity is important. I think resilience is important in terms of persisting over time, and learning is like that as well. Whether it's learning on the sporting field or learning a musical instrument or learning scientific principles, that there is just that view of hard work and consistency and application are very important for boys. I think the other thing for boys is helping them to really develop their communication skills and their relational skills. Quite often they can lag a little bit in that area, particularly in relation to girls, and families will see that with their families. A young boy, maybe doesn't say as much or prefers to run outside and hit things and sit inside and make things. But I think, gradually they do have important things to say and they do want to talk, but you need to create environments for them. So, curiosity, communication, building strong relationships with people and helping them to do that, and also that sense of persistence and resilience.
Keep going. I think we live in a world where so much trust has been lost. How do you instill a sense of trust, even truth, into the fine young man?
It's a very good question, and there would be a lot of people who say there is no such thing as truth. Well, there are lots of things that are true. There are scientific principles that we know to be true, and there are philosophical principles that we know to be true. And I think we have to be careful we don't just jump on the latest bandwagon and forget 2,000 years of Western or Eastern civilization here, but make sure we're tapping into that. So I think when you're a young person, the greatest teacher is the person, or it is the teacher. So I think the responsibility of the adults, the significant adults that are looking after and guiding children are very important, that they're explicit about who they are, why they make decisions they make, why they have particular passions and interests in their subject or outside of school. I think, for example, if you wanted to form a view about whether marriage is valid in the 21st century, a young person will probably form that view because they have a teacher or a parent or a friend's parent who actually has apparently a very happy and solid marriage, and they'll inquire about that. And that's a form of education. I think that you can translate that example into many facets of life. But young children, they look and they observe, and they're quite astute in that regard.
When we talk about where's this come from, a lot of this emerges unapologetically from the Christian faith and those 2,000 years of lived experience.
Yeah, and I think for us, the Christian faith, the Christian principles are, continue to be relevant, as we know that over 2,000 years they have been refined and applied in a modern context, and we're often looking to do that. I mean, as new problems and new issues emerge, we have to rethink our beliefs and values and how we apply those to certain contexts. But that's part of the human experience. And I don't think it's a matter of saying that the particular beliefs that were held 300 years ago or 500 years ago are no longer relevant. I think they are. They're probably more relevant, and they do provide a strong foundation. If I can pick that view up, I had the privilege of doing my own doctorate and working with an educational philosopher, and his view was that you need to be careful that you don't indoctrinate children, and you indoctrinate them by not giving them the opportunity to think and grow. But you do need to provide a foundation for them on which they can actually make a decision. And he used the example of saying, if children didn't know what food was, and you just opened the doors of a supermarket and said, go and get me some food, then which aisle would they go down?
Yes,
which food would they select?
Yeah.
So that whole idea of you can start with a Presbyterian or a Catholic foundation or a Jewish foundation, and from that foundation you can then start to formulate your beliefs and values. And his view was that people will develop more autonomy in terms of their intellectual journey from that foundation than they will be being told that there is no foundation and you just got to find your way in the world.
I know the school is not about you, it's about the students. But what's it do to you to see the potential of young men unlocked and flourish? Yeah,
look, that's a fantastic question. I think that's your reason for becoming an educator, is that you believe in the potential of human beings, and you have this privileged position of shaping a life and working with families in that partnership. I think that's really important. The greatest reward is not the box of chocolates at the end, but it's that young man that comes out at 18, 19, or comes back when he's 26 and, can look you in the eye and shake your hand and say, you know what, that educational experience I had, or that moment with that particular teacher or with you, was one of the most profound moments. And you can put the tick up and say, you know what, he's well and truly on his way, and that's a great feeling.
What a great reward for you. Let's talk about building learning communities for boys. Tell me what they're going to look like. What will boys be learning there? How will those communities be built? They just don't happen, do they?
No, they don't. I think every school is different in that there are a lot of things we do in schools that are quite common, but fundamentally schools have a different culture, a different set of values, and they will focus on different areas depending on their geography, history, priorities. For us, we look at this notion of learning communities, and we say schools are often the recipients of knowledge that comes from somewhere else. So what we're teaching in a classroom has trickled down from a community of knowledge somewhere, usually a university, where a mathematical principle has been worked out, it's been put in a textbook over time and then taught by the teacher, and then by the time we're teaching it, the university and the knowledge, the frontier of knowledge has moved on. And so we look at who are the communities of knowledge out there that are quite significant, and what are the areas that are important for us? And then who are the communities of practice? So usually you find that knowledge is put in place in businesses and enterprises and think tanks around the world. And you can see that with a corporation such as Apple or Google. I mean, it's a community of practice that's taken, the science and the mathematics and the technology, and it's applied in a lived community. And then we combine those two things and say, well, we're a school. Our job is about, human formation, or the unfolding of a young person in preparation for their life now and their life in the future. So imagine if we could triangulate that knowledge and that experience and make the experience for children really cutting edge, contemporary, based on the latest learning and the latest experience we have. And also, how can we use those communities to make sure our teachers are up to date, that they're feeling absolutely on top of their game all the time, and they can be supported professionally through that network. So we're looking to do that both through what we call our Patribus centres, and Patribus comes from our motto, which is, may we be worthy of our forefathers. Patribus means forefather. And the idea there is that we will focus on the character and care of students. We'll focus on experiential education. We'll focus on the body, mind and spirit, or body, mind and heart, which is that holistic development of the child. We'll look at entrepreneurship and social leadership, and we will also look at design thinking. And all those 5 areas are all what we would see critical future spaces in which young people will have to be supported and aware of. And we have some historic strengths in those areas. So we're looking at how do we build these communities of knowledge and practice around those 5 key pillars.
Yeah, may seem a bit of a left field question, but what place do parents have in the building of those learning communities?
I think they have a lot. I mean, fortunately, I think every school parent body is a resource, and you can take a different view in a school. You can either leave parents at the front gate or you can bring them in to your school community. And we're very privileged here at Scots in that we have some very capable and experienced parents from a wide range of backgrounds, and we find that quite often they're looking for a way in which they can contribute to the school. And that's not just in a monetary sense. That's how can I share my knowledge, experience that I've learned over 40 years and help the boys' education.
Yeah.
So we, bringing them into that space and asking their opinion, having them speak to boys, being involved in seminars and work experience, a whole range of things that we can tap into. And quite often, again, a meeting with a parent that's involved in some work that a child's never heard of can be the turning point for them.
Sure.
So it's another one of those little
right.
things that you can just add another layer of education.
Yeah. You've had a recent visit to China, which has informed you somewhat about this whole issue of building learning communities.
Yep.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, I think there's no doubt the Chinese are streets ahead in so many areas in terms of the economic growth, in terms of the priority they place on education. And I'd have to say I come away every time inspired by that.
Yeah.
For me as an educator, when I go into a meeting, I'm treated as royalty, and I would be if I was a teacher, in that they just
value it.
They just value it so strongly, and they see the future of their country is dependent upon the quality of education they're providing. And I had a conversation with some Year 10 students. We were having a cruise down in Guangzhou, and I was asking them about education and why they think it's important, and they could not understand the question. They said, why would you not think education's important?
Really?
It's the most important thing.
How revealing.
It's the foundation in life. You would never go to school and not work hard. So I think somehow that's the way in which they teach is, we would say, is fairly structured and simplistic and very much teacher-directed. But they're also very curious, and they're very keen to learn off us about how we develop all those other character traits around how do you develop, personality and character and confidence and all those traits that they know they will need as they start to move and work in the Western world.
Yes. Can I ask you finally, paint us a picture or tell us perhaps a story of the kind of fine young man you've seen emerge in your years as an educator here. What's he look like? What's he doing? What's his story today?
I think there'd be so many from the brightest, most capable boys who've, decided that they'll choose a university pathway and a vocational pathway that's more concerned with caring and help. I'll pick one character. I won't name him, but he was the head prefect, which is a school captain, one of the most influential young men in the school. I think 10 years later his legacy is still here because of his very strong Christian values and principles, his servant-heartedness, his determination in terms of his academic commitment, plus also his sporting commitment. And after school, he went on and went to South Africa and worked in an orphanage for 12 months, came back and worked for World Vision, started his commerce degree, and then went to China for a year to learn Mandarin over there, still comes back and talks to the boys here, is involved in youth and young people program, leadership program. I just see a young man like that.
How old is he now?
Oh, he's just nearly 26 now.
My goodness.
And I sit down sometimes and say, God, I wish I could have been like that. I mean, how did he learn that? But I think the thing that inspires me is he will end up a significant leader somewhere in the community, and he will look around him and he will actually look at ways in which he can make Australia a better place. He can support education. He can support people, with less opportunities than he had. And just that general humility continues to kind of roll out and flow on. So it's opportunity. He's curious. He loves life. Great relationships with people. confident in his own skin, and you just know, you know what, job well done.
What a privilege to be involved in that kind of process, building that fine young man. Dr. Ian Lambert, thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. If you'd like more information about growing your boy into a fine young man, you can subscribe to receive useful articles and news from the Scots College. It's free and offered to every parent who wants the very best for their boy in their journey to manhood. In your internet search engine, enter the Scots College e-newsletter to subscribe. I'm Lee Hatcher. Hope you'll join me again next week on the Brave Hearts, Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. Now, you've been here before to do this. You know the drill. Ring us out, Ian.
Okay.